Hi, William.
Hi, hello.
Hi, you can hear me?
Hi, I can hear you. Hi,
Okay,
how
very
are
good.
you?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What's the weather like these days in Bratislava? It's still very hot over here.
It's very warm here. It's
Yeah,
almost like some kind of Indian summer.
yeah. But also it's been more. It has winter hasn't hit yet. The fall hasn't hit yet.
We haven't had much of winter either.
Yeah. Okay. Good
Very
afternoon.
warm, sunny.
I'm gonna go take a look at your questions, and we'll try to get through as many as we can over here.
Yeah, I know it's a lot.
I just, there was one thing I just wanted to point out to you that I just, again, there's lots of these points that people don't so much give any credence to. But in Israel, obviously, so the government here spends a lot of money on defense, right? On protecting us and the whole Iron Dome
Hmm.
system to shoot down the
Hmm.
rockets, and every home has a shelter, every business has a shelter, every school and everything. And
Hmm.
everybody is pointing to, and again, it's a tragedy and it's awful, and nobody wants Palestinian civilians to die. There's no question about that. They're saying that there's 10,000 people that died. We maybe dispute those numbers, but there's no question that there's thousands of people that have been killed. There's no question about it. There's
And
no
wounded, and wounded, and starving,
Yes, yes, and no question that not all of them are civilians either. There's no question that there's many Hamas terrorists that have been killed throughout this. There's no question. They wear plain clothes.
all that is debatable. All that
Well,
is debatable.
in
And
any fighting,
I wanna share something maybe as an introduction. I did this morning. I had a class. I teach. Usually, I teach students one on one, and it was a conversation class. And the student wanted to know more about this conflict. It's on people's minds, and I incorporated some of the things you told me. Some things I see a little bit differently, especially if we go back in the history. And he kept asking me but what about the state of Palestine in 1945 or six? And I had to keep explaining that that was not like a nation, and that was hard for him to get. And it's not because he's stupid; he's very intelligent. But he assumes that every patch on Earth is somehow always a nation, and it was very hard for him to grasp that the Ottoman Empire fell apart and wasn't so clear what this part of the world was going to be. So, and I repeated what you told me, that Arabs and Jews arrived together, that it was sparsely populated. So I am really listening to you. Like
no, I could tell. I could tell. I appreciate it
if
very
I
much.
yeah, but if I disagree with you, then I'm also very serious. Huh?
Yes, no, 100%.
I do not accept this bombing campaign. I do not. I saw an interview with an American nurse who just
I
got back
saw
from
it. I
Gaza.
saw it as well. I saw it.
It's seriously, Moshe, this is haunting me. I am losing sleep over this. Like I have a 4 year old. I love him to bits. He's the most important thing in the world to me. And seeing children suffer like that, it breaks my heart.
I completely agree with you. I agree with you that it's an awful situation. I want to point something out though to you, just to kind of put this in perspective, right? So let me ask you something. If there would also be 10,000 dead Jews, right? Let's just say in this conflict there would also be already 10,000 Jews that were killed,
I
and
would
the
find
same
that
thing.
horrible. I would find that horrible.
It would be horrible, and it would also put in perspective that this is a war, right? It would put that into perspective that a war is a war, and people unfortunately die in a war. I don't I
But
don't
this is very lopsided war.
Well, so that's what I
No.
want to point out to you. It's a lopsided war. They have sent into Israel since this began 9,000 rockets.
Hmm.
That's not including the rockets that land in Gaza and kill their own civilians, not
Hmm.
including those. Into Israel, between 8,500 and 9,000 rockets have landed in Israel. The Barzilai hospital in Ashkelon 3 times
Hmm.
was hit, direct hits with rockets
Hmm.
so far.
Can I explain what this does to me, or what is this? How I see that? And maybe this is totally wrong. I am willing to hear your perspective. Maybe it is morally completely wrong what I'm going to say, but this is how I experience that. Like I see people caged in. That's how I see it. You can maybe convince me that it's not like that. And then they cobble together crappy rockets, which they shoot at a country that can clearly take them down. So I'm like, okay, yeah, it is like some kind of show of force. Like we are still alive, we are still here, but they're not hitting anything.
Well, but that's
So
exactly my point. That's because
if they would be using very sophisticated rockets and targeting chemical plants in Tel Aviv, then I would be like, oh, guys, oh, this
well,
is too
I
much.
understand, but this is only because Israel has spent hundreds of millions of our dollars on protecting us. That's the reason that we're not dying
And you have
in
every right to do that.
thousands.
And I defend that. Of course, you should
Well,
have
so I
this Iron
understand,
Dome. You should.
this
Yeah.
is the piece that I keep we keep on coming back to this. It's the fact that Jews are not dying in great numbers because our government protects us.
I prefer to use the word Israelis because you're ignoring 20% of your
Okay,
population
you're
who are
right.
also being
Israelis, very good.
targeted.
Israelis, good, well said. There's many Arabs that have been killed in this as well. 100%.
Yeah, which is
100%.
completely ridiculous. Then if Arabs shooting Arabs,
100%.
yeah.
100%. So, okay, I'm sorry, absolutely correct. Israelis, you're absolutely correct. So I just like, to me, there's such like a moral, a lack of moral clarity. Like, let's say if every one of those rockets only killed one person each, they could kill a person. When they
Yeah,
land,
yeah.
they make an explosion.
They have some lethal force, of course.
Yes, there's no question
Yeah,
about it. And if it lands
yeah.
on a building and the people are not in the shelter, it'll kill a family.
Hmm.
That's what they will do. So
Hmm.
so I'm just saying, to me, you have. I don't care that they're crappy rockets, that they don't have the great sophistication and all of
Hmm.
that. They
Hmm.
are trying every single day. It's not just like it's not just like it's not just, this is not like I don't know what the word I'm looking for.
Like
It's not.
fireworks.
Well, I'm sorry.
So
Yeah, not
Norman
just like
Finkelstein calls them fireworks.
not
That's
symbolic.
exaggerated.
That's what I'm saying. It's not symbolic. It's not
Mhm.
saying
Yeah.
symbolic. We're here. They are trying to kill us. It's only because Israel, for a decade, has been planning for, that this was going to end up happening. That they developed the Iron Dome and that they developed all the bomb shelters that we go into. But I just, to me, again, even if we accept their numbers, even if we say there's not a single Hamas person in all of those 10,000 people, if it's 10,000, and that there's not a single Hamas, it's all civilians, which I don't believe either of those things. But that's a terrible,
I
terrible
think
fact.
the vast majority are civilians. I think.
Okay, I don't know whether we'll get to this. We'll see.
Hmm.
Like March of Return, also what you wrote about. We'll get to that as well. But
Hmm.
yes, I'm willing to concede. Also, the majority are civilians. Yes, I will agree to that. But that's because their country is in a war, and they do nothing to protect their people. They do.
I agree. I agree.
I understand, but
I agree. I also
I'm
agree.
sure you saw the
Wait.
pictures.
I also agree that Hamas is very cynically benefiting from this.
Well, correct.
I agree. I think this is what they were hoping for.
I understand.
Let's have dead babies go across the globe.
What my point is, and this is what I said to Kim Iversen 6 months ago. I said this to her, and I said, to me, what people like her are guilty of is they could be using their platform. They could have been for 10 years. They could be using their platform to actually spotlight Hamas, to actually spotlight the people that are the direct cause of this death and destruction. Now that we're engaged in a war with them and their civilians are dying at a much higher rate than ours are, it's terrible and it looks lopsided. And I agree with you. We're losing the PR war. I completely agree with you in that respect. There's no question about it. But my point is, if people actually cared, like I wrote to you on Twitter, if people actually cared about the Palestinians, and people, not you, I'm not including you in this, but I'm saying if the people in the media, the people on the left, if they actually cared about the Palestinians and didn't focus on hating Israel, then for 10 years, 15 years already, since Hamas took over, they would be talking about Hamas and talking about what they are doing to their own population. Do you even know that a few months ago, this is one of the things I wanted to show you. I'll put onto the screen. 1 second. I'll share the screen with you. A few months ago, there were mass uprisings in Gaza against Hamas. There was street uprisings. There was a whole they crushed it, violently crushed it with live
No,
ammunition.
doesn't surprise me at all. No, I'm not a fan of Hamas. I'm not
I
waving Hamas
understand,
flags
but
or anything.
this is the point that people don't. 1 second, I'll share this with you. That people don't. They don't look at this. They don't care about this. This is not something that they point to. They're just happy to be able to blame it on Israel when they see that there's Israelis that are doing it. Here, this is one of these things. Palestinians. This is going back. What's the date on this? In July, right? This is a few months ago, the beginning of the summer. Palestinians are asking, why is this not being covered by Al Jazeera? Right? Because it's Gazans rioting against Hamas, calling an end to their oppression and demanding in their words life conditions as good as the children of Hamas leaders. Right?
So those people are now caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yes,
Israel bombing them and Hamas killing them.
But my point is that the double standard, the hypocrisy of the Western media. One second, I don't know if you could see this one now. I'll share this one with you also. The hypocrisy and the double standard of the Western media, that if they actually cared about the Gazans and they actually cared about the Palestinians, and not just when there was an opportunity to blame Israel for it, people would have been paying attention to this. We're a very,
but you say the Western media. I always experienced the Western media as being very pro-Israel, very pro-Israel.
Okay, this is that. Let's just say the liberals, the leftist, more the leftist liberal people like Kim Iversen, people like Roger Waters, people like Katie Halpert, people like these people who are in support of ostensibly the Palestinians.
Okay,
they don't do anything about this. They don't on any of this.
I agree. They only wake up when Israel starts bombing. I agree. Mostly they only wake up. Israel is bombing. Let's show our moral outrage now.
Right. Okay. So to me, this is like what a lot of the messages I've been trying to, like when I send you on WhatsApp, that there's a tremendous moral double standard in the world. Again, none of this has nothing to do with condoning or excusing killing civilians. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how we got here. How did we get to a place that now Israel's in a state where the only way that we feel that we can go forward is by this mass carnage and all of these dead people, and which again is a tragedy. It's a tragedy that's awful. And I'm sure you saw today or yesterday the tens of thousands of people. Have you ever seen literally in the history of warfare? In the history of warfare, has there ever been a time that the enemy army is protecting the quote unquote enemy from leaving the war zone from their own army? You know what I mean? And that's exactly what's happening. They opened up a humanitarian corridor to go down to the south, and it's guarded by Israeli tanks so that the Gazans can go south and not be stopped by Hamas. It's crazy. It's a crazy world.
It's not exactly the same, but during the American Civil War, that's the only conflict I consider myself to be an expert on. All those books are about the American Civil War.
Oh, very interesting.
I think the Union often made efforts to.
Okay, well, I agree, because those were brothers. Those were people. They were brothers and cousins. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, fine. Not the entire history of warfare.
Yeah. That's the only thing I really know a lot about.
Right. Okay. Good. That's good. Good to know. Good to know. But I just this one point that, if there would be thousands and thousands of Israelis dying and every day a few hundred people were being killed by rockets, I think that people would have a different attitude to what's going on. Except that.
So sorry to interrupt you. Like I've also questioned myself. Like I accept that 1,300, 1,400. The numbers keep changing. Died on the Israeli side, and then I do notice in myself like a little bit less outrage, and I question that. Like, William, why do you sympathize more with the Palestinian side? And I really try to understand this. And I come up with some answers, like for example, the story of 40 beheaded babies. I think it's fake, and then I get angry. Like, it's already bad. Why does Israel need to like throw oil on the fire and come up with this bogus story? I don't believe it. I don't believe there were 40 beheaded babies.
Right.
And
Nobody said it was 40. There was one newscaster that said they at
yeah,
the same
but
time they said
they kept repeating it.
no, they said 40 babies, some beheaded. That's what they said. They
yeah,
said,
yeah, but then it gets picked up and it's everywhere,
okay,
and I get angry, like, Israel is lying again.
okay,
My
I hear
perception of Israel
nobody
is,
from the official Israeli anybody said that. There was a newscast. People on social media.
sorry, but the official Twitter account of Israel, they repeated it.
No, they didn't say 40 beheaded. You have to show that to me.
I will find it.
Yeah.
They equaled Hamas to ISIS, which to me is such bullshit. It's not the same. Why make this comparison? It's not the
I
same.
don't see it so different. People who
Yeah.
film themselves butchering and massacring and torturing people in order for the shock value. That's what
But they are
ISIS
not the same. These are two
originated.
separate groups.
Well, I understand, but
If you let them meet, they will probably murder each other because they probably can't stand each other. So then to
okay,
say like Hamas equals ISIS, to me it's ridiculous. It's childish almost.
well, I think
And
morally,
all
I don't
these
think
things,
people are trying to say it's the same organization. People are saying
but that's how
morally.
it comes across. That's
Okay,
really how it comes across.
I think the moral comparison is valid.
And then liberals, or however you want to call them, they react and they say, oh no, is Israel played the air force of ISIS in all those years, and now they are claiming that Hamas is the same as ISIS. Like they many liberals see Israel somehow as an ally of ISIS. That's how bad Israel is viewed. And I'm trying to explain to you how it's possible that Israel is viewed so negatively.
I understand that they have a very, very
This morning, sorry that I talk so much.
no, go
So
ahead, go ahead.
this morning I see a video with some guy, Dan Cohen. I didn't know him. He's apparently an American Jew who he visited Gaza, and he talks a lot about it. He seems to know a lot, and he talks about some kind of Telegram channel where you can constantly watch dead Palestinians. I think it's called Dead Terrorists, but they are usually civilians, and Israelis cheer this on. Yeah, and they have a lot of followers. And then I think, my God, what's wrong with this country? Why do they do that? They are apparently calling them hot dogs when they see burned Palestinian children. I mean, why
No,
do
that's
something like that?
disgusting and awful. And
Yeah?
I'm saying, like you showed me also, I think it was you who showed me the people on TikTok playing dead as Palestinians. That's
Yeah,
disgusting. And no,
why do that?
that's okay. That you have extremist and crazy people and fringe people in every
But
society.
they don't see the issue is that they don't seem to be so fringe. That's my problem. If these would be five idiots, but they seem to be a substantial number of people.
Even if it's a few thousand people out of 8 million people,
It's more than that. Dan Cohen, and he seemed to be quite credible. He said 2% is his estimate.
Mhm. I don't
That's
know.
a lot. 2% is a lot.
That's reprehensible and not something that either I or the official Israeli government or anybody like that supports. Like one of the things that you mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned or somebody else in 1994, that Baruch Goldstein, right? The 1994 in Hebron, you know what I'm talking about? That a Jewish
I think I didn't tell you that. I didn't mention
okay, so I was with somebody else that I was back and forth with on Twitter. So what happened was, you know what I'm talking about, though. I'm saying, you know what took place.
He went and shot a lot of people.
Yeah, he went crazy in 19.
Yeah, I was there. They told me about this.
Yeah,
I was a few hundred meters away from where it happened.
Well, so in 1994, we could say Hebron and Hebron, so he was a doctor who had treated many victims of terror and all of these things, and they say he snapped, and I don't know, and that he took his machine gun and killed 30, 40 Muslims, injured more, and there are people here who made his grave into like a shrine, and they respect it. But that's like a fringe group. There's no streets named after him in Israel. There's no park named after Baruch Goldstein for doing what he did. From our perspective, and maybe you'll tell me I'm wrong about this, but in the territories in the West Bank and in Gaza, these people are lionized. The people that commit atrocities and terror attacks against the Jewish people, the Israelis over here, these are people who have streets named after them. They're people who have parks named after them. They're people who the children are taught to look up to them and to see them as martyrs and see them as heroes.
I would agree to that. Yeah.
Right. So
I don't. It's been a long time since I've been there. 2009. I think I remember seeing posters of dead militants, and they were kind of glorified.
yeah,
Yeah,
there's no question that the
yeah.
society, the society on the whole over here is not like what you are describing. Again, what percentages? I don't know, 2%,
But you
5%.
but you understand that this is what's coming out.
It's terrible. Yes, it's terrible.
You
It's
can tell me
terrible.
that I'm in some kind of echo chamber where I constantly see negative things about Israel, but I don't look for those things. They just keep being offered to me. Maybe it's my algorithm. I don't know, but it's there, and it affects me, and of course it influences the way I view Israel, and not just me.
Of course.
Yeah,
I'm saying
and
you're
then 1,400 Israelis get killed, and the reaction is then I accept that there are 10,000 Palestinian dead, and then I notice that I kind of understand why Hamas killed 1,400, and I don't understand why they killed 10,000. Maybe it's wrong, probably it is kind of wrong, but I'm trying to understand it, and I'm trying to communicate it to you,
no,
so you also understand.
I absolutely hear what you're saying, and I think unfortunately you're representative of probably tens of millions of people in the
Yeah,
world that see it
yeah,
this
but
way.
I actually I don't want to brag, but I doubt they're so honest about this.
No, I don't think they are.
They will claim that it's equally bad, but I don't believe them
No,
actually.
I don't.
Yeah.
I agree with you. You're the only person who's ever offered on Twitter ever to talk to me, about this. You're the only one, So yeah, 100%. Okay, so let's look at your questions. I want to go 1 second. Let me open this up over here, and
You don't have to go one by one, like you can choose.
well, there's a number of them that I don't know anything about, so I'm not going to address things
Yeah.
that I don't know. So let me just let's just go. I would like to go through as many as I can though, just because they're
Okay.
very good questions. They make a lot of sense, and I appreciate you asking. Okay, so I'm just looking at it. Should I share the? Okay, whatever. I just okay. The white phosphorus. I don't know anything about this. I don't know. I've seen pictures of the results. I don't know how much it's used. I've definitely seen pictures where people are claiming it was used when it wasn't. That's for sure. There was just recently a video
Mhm.
of smoke grenades landing in a schoolyard, and they said phosphor, and it said on
Yeah,
the bottom.
I think there's propaganda on both sides, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think in
So
some cases it's used, and I don't see why
I don't know. I agree. I don't know. I
it's
don't know.
excessive.
I don't know anything about it,
Yeah.
and I just don't know.
Uh,
Um,
I
okay.
also found out there's only one place where these munitions are loaded with phosphorus, and it's in America. It's actually only one plant, and it's a U.S. plant that I forgot where, and they create this, they produce this.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
Uh,
know anything about it or what the point of using it or if it's even used. I just don't know. I don't know.
yeah, it's a horrible weapon.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
excessive.
Absolutely. I don't know. I don't know about it. The second question you asked is like what was behind the pullout in 2005, right?
Hmm.
The Gaza. So do you know the whole story, the roadmap to peace? Are you familiar with this?
Vaguely.
Okay, so this was let me see. Maybe I can open up a page about this for us. Hold on 1 second. But this was the 1 second. This was the initiative that was set up, I think, in 2003. Here, 1 second. Yeah, I'll share this with you 1 second. Okay, so the roadmap, it was a provisional, it was a setup that they tried to do between Ariel Sharon and Abbas. This is already after Arafat. Arafat already had his own peace offer, which he dismissed, right? That was with Clinton.
And why did he dismiss that? Did he
It's a very
explain? Did he explain?
it's a very good question. You'd have to ask them why. Yeah, I'm saying they said it wasn't good enough, but it was the best deal that they've ever been offered. That was the best thing they were ever offered. It was like 97% of the land with land swaps. It was an incredible deal, and then he instead started the second Intifada. That's exactly what it was.
97% of what of the West Bank and Gaza, or
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
But this was a different plan. This was supposed to be a roadmap. Like there's supposed to be steps along the way. The steps along the way that people were going to take mutual steps And one of those steps was to be leaving Gaza. That, part of what was going to be the step-by-step approach to, Israel was going to freeze settlements in the West Bank. Israel was going to leave Gaza. They were going to, each side was supposed to take steps. So the withdrawal from Gaza was a part of this. It was a part of, the PA, the Palestinian Authority, didn't have any concrete things to give. It was all like cease violence and incitement, and they were supposed to dismantle Hamas. They were supposed to do all of these, types of things, and whatever. It was a whole plan, and the part of this plan was for Israel to be leaving Gaza. That Israel was supposed to, pull out and give them the opportunity to govern and to, show that they can coexist peacefully. They can live side by side, and it was supposed to be a part of the plan. And this is like what I've told you a number of times, that Israel, following the 2005 withdrawal, which was a massive controversy here. It was huge.
I remember that. I remember.
It was terrible. It was terrible. And many people were saying exactly what was going to happen is that it's just going to become the biggest terrorist base in the world. It's going to be basically just, a whole chunk of land that's going to be used to develop terror. And everyone says, no, we have to give it a chance. We have to try land for peace. We have to do this. We have to try. And they did it. So I don't know. I'm sure there are many other aspects and factors, and like you said, in terms of it was too expensive and all these other things, but there's no question that the prime reason for doing this was supposed to be a good faith, a show of good faith. We're going to give you the land, we're going to give you what you're asking for, and let's see what you'll do with it now.
But I told you that on Wikipedia I find these like explanations and the rationales that there was a danger of Israel becoming a state with a minority of Jews and a majority of Arabs, and that this was part of the reason why they left there.
So I'm not sure what that idea. That's like why one state is not going to be a solution, right? The idea that the one state solution, I never saw that with respect to Gaza. I saw that with respect to why Israel wants a two-state solution rather than a one-state solution, because in one state, that's true. Within a couple of generations, the Jews will end up being a minority, and then we lose our Jewish state, right? But I never saw that as a specific,
Well, it's on Wikipedia, which I don't consider to be a pro-Palestinian source generally.
Right. Okay. I understand.
It has long paragraphs explaining this idea.
I didn't take a look at that.
It didn't make total sense to me, but I don't really see how staying there then turns the Jews into a minority. But
right, I'm not okay. So I'll take a look at that, and maybe next time we speak, I'll try to see what you're talking about here.
But okay, like, so back to your point. So they leave, they get a chance to create their own state, and in your words, they create the biggest terrorist base on earth.
Well, I mean, that's what people were worried about. What people were worried about was that would end up happening.
You said that's what happened.
Well, so it did, not immediately, right? But within 2 years, Hamas.
And why do you think that happened? Like, are these people simply so crazy, or do they possibly have a reason to be like that?
Well, Hamas, I think, is so crazy. Yes, I think Hamas.
They're just so crazy.
Well, look what they just did. Look what they just did. They just did a.
Yeah, but why? I mean, maybe I believe too much in action reaction or I try to see other human beings as rational beings.
Well, you're trying to impose your Western mentality on people who do not share your mentality.
If you want to push me to kill people like they did, you have to do seriously horrible things to me, and then I probably will also become a killer. So then I assume. That it happened to them.
You're falling into the trap of what I think many Western people fall into, which is this, like America in Iraq, when they said we're going to liberate Iraq and it's going to become a democracy and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
they're not interested.
Very naive.
There are people who don't have the same mindset as you and me, and this is one of the biggest problems of the leftist liberal mindset in the West, is that they assume that everybody is like us, everybody's like them, everybody shares common values and everybody shares common beliefs, and if you'll just make everything okay for them and make everything the right conditions, then of course it will flourish. But it's just not like that. There's different cultures. There are different mentalities that exist for generation after generation after generation. There are generations that are brought up on hatred and venom and vengeance and all of those things. And yes, I believe that's exactly what happened. I don't think it's any more complex than that. That Hamas is a radical jihadi movement. That's what they are. And they co-opted the Palestinian, the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm saying this is going back many generations. They co-opted the Palestinian cause for them, and they killed thousands of Palestinians when they took over. It wasn't just that they were voted in power. They were voted in, and then they did a full cleansing. They killed thousands of Palestinians during that time in street battles in Gaza, and they took over the entire strip. And that's that one hashtag that I sent to you, which was one that you responded, can we talk, right, was that the Gaza you don't see, right? You know what I'm talking about? That hashtag where it shows that there are people who live in Gaza in luxury.
I believe that, but a minority, right?
That's I understand, but that's the minority that holds the power over there.
Yeah, I get that.
You can't call it nobody lived in luxury in the Warsaw Ghetto. You understand what I mean? Nobody lived in luxury in Auschwitz.
But to me, the majority of them live in something akin to a concentration camp. I saw
imposed by Hamas, imposed by their own government. How could explain how it could be if there's enough resources and there's enough material and resources for two things? One, for people like them to have equestrian schools and restaurants and vacation villas and swimming pools and mansions, luxury car dealerships, right? All those things existed in Gaza. All of that existed in Gaza.
I believe you.
So, and at the same time, they've built an entire underground city, right? They've built an entire city underground. So there's enough resources, there's enough cement, there's enough construction material, there's enough of all of that stuff getting into Gaza, right? It's there, it got there. Somehow people have been able to create all of this other stuff with it, right? But it's not getting to the citizens. That's not Israel. That's not Israel who's doing that. Israel has no control over what happens within Gaza. That means
I agree, but right before we spoke, I can send it to you. I saw an interview with I think somebody who helped to develop cancer treatments in Gaza, and he tells me, he says in the interview, Israel won't allow these cancer patients, these kids, to go outside of Gaza to receive treatment.
That's just not true. You have to send that to me. It's just not true. There are people right now, there are Gazans right now that are trapped in Israel because they were in hospitals in Israel getting treatment, and now they can't go back to Gaza. That's just
I believe that. Yeah.
Okay, you have to send it to me. We'll send each other links to this. But this is
I will. Yeah.
It's just not true. There are many thousands of Gazans that are treated in Israel in hospitals by Jewish, Israeli, Arab doctors in Israeli hospitals all the time. It is not Israel that is oppressing them there. Again, I'm just saying, if you have you have all of that stuff, it got into Gaza somehow, right? That means it was allowed in, or they smuggled it in. I don't know, however it got there.
Probably,
but then it's not Israel that is doing that to them. And they say this openly. They said, I'm sure you saw this interview where he said, no, the tunnels, that's not for the civilians of Gaza, that's for our fighters to be protected. It's up to the UN to take care of the Gazans. What
is despicable mentality. I agree.
So again, yes, it's a despicable mentality, and these are the people that, yes, they took over control over there, and they said, we have zero interest in helping our citizens. We have zero interest in helping them. We're going to force them to live in poverty and blame it on Israel.
Yeah, they used the suffering of their own population as currency.
Yes, 100%. And
I'm not disagreeing there. I'm not disagreeing there.
And people like Kim Iversen and Roger Waters, and they all go along with it, and they all buy it, and they all say yes. And it's just simply not true. How many people? I mean, I'm very happy that you went to that hashtag and you saw for yourself. People would not believe that stuff exists in Gaza. They just wouldn't believe it. They picture Gaza the way that you picture Gaza, as a hellhole with nothing there and dirty water.
But to be clear, like mostly it is a hellhole with
You're
a
right.
minority that
Mostly it
lives like
is.
kings. Yeah.
Mostly it is, but that's not Israel's fault. When you can see again, I'm just going to say that nothing like that existed in the Warsaw Ghetto, right? Nothing.
No.
Because that's a real prison. That's a real ghetto. That's a real concentration camp. We're talking about a place where the rulers force them to live as if they're in a ghetto. Look, this is in many Arab countries like this. Qatar is like this. Many Arab countries run this way, where the rulers live in luxury and the people are poor and suffering and starving. This is not unique to Gaza, right? It's just that over here,
Kim Iversen is not going to visit and make a video about that.
No, I understand. I understand. It's just over here because we could blame it on Israel, so they blame it on us. They have somebody that they could pretend it's our fault, but it's not. It is not our fault. And this has been going on for almost 20 years. People could have been shining a light on this. People could have been, publicizing this and showing, no, this is not what you think it is. Look around, look and see what's actually going on. Look and see that there's, five-star restaurants and people whining and dining and leaving. Also, people can come and go and travel. The wealthy people in Gaza, they travel all around the world. They travel.
Yeah, but most of them can't, right?
You're right, but not because Israel imprisons them, because Hamas imprisons them. That's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. The fact that thousands of people do come and go, right? That it's not us who's keeping them there. It's their own people. It's their own.
But before try to help me understand this. So before October 7th, if you are a regular family in Gaza and you want to visit Tel Aviv, can you?
No, Tel Aviv you can't. No.
Well, yeah, and you see, this sounds like a prison to me. Then why can't they visit Tel Aviv?
Because there's one second. Let's just take a step back. 1 second. There were 20,000 Gazans every single day that had work permits, right? 20,000 Gazans every single day were coming into Israel, earning Israeli wages and making a living for them.
Work permits for which they pay money. I know it costs money for them to get it.
Could be. I don't know. I don't know.
Quite a lot of money.
I don't know.
It costs quite a lot of money. In the West Bank, I talked to people and they told
money. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think Israel's making $1 million from the Gaza.
No, that's not the point. It's not. I don't think it's the point to make money. I think it's the point to make it hard on them. I think that's the policy. In the West Bank, I saw again and again, I saw policies that I could only explain like, okay, they want to make life shitty here, so they will leave.
Okay, well, we'll get to the West Bank in a minute. You're right. There's a lot to get to. There's a lot to get to over here.
I know.
I understand what you're saying, and I think again, I'm going to say two things. There's a part of what you're saying that I agree with. I do agree with you that there are policies and there are things that are done that do go too far. I do agree with that. However, that's also not out of the blue. There's a context for that, and that developed over
agree
time.
There as well, you don't want buses to be blown up. I understand that. Yeah?
There's a certain context over there. Okay, but let's just go back because we're going to too many open tabs over here. So so I will say like what I said before. Yes, Gazan, the Hamas in Gaza, the way they took over and what they decided to do when they took over is because they are what you would call crazy. Because they have a mentality of violence and vengeance. And for them, they've said this explicitly now in interviews, it's much more important for them to be able to kill Israelis than it is to keep the Gazans happy and healthy and free.
Sorry, my wife.
Oh, hello.
Is it urgent?
No, I just didn't know if you didn't forget to switch off anything like last time, so I wasn't sure if you're really here.
No, I'm here. I will.
So I think that's what happened in Gaza. We were hoping, I think that they were hoping that it would be the Palestinian Authority would take over and turn it into something real, and then progress down the roadmap for peace. They could have had for 23 years, or they could have had a place. They could have had, well, that's before. That was Arafat 23 years ago who turned down the peace deal. But they could have turned it into something. Then you're right. Now, after they turned it into a terror, a terror base, and they attacked Israelis and they kidnapped Gilad Shalit and all of those things. And so, yes, so then they set up a blockade because they're not going to let them just, and you see, even with the blockade, the amount of material that they have there to build hundreds of miles of tunnels and bases underground. How many mosques, how many hospitals, how many schools, how many roads could have been built with all of that? But that's not their priority. Clearly, it's not their priority. And they devoted all of it to what their priority is, which is to be able to wipe Israel off the map. That's their goal. That's what they're about. And that's what they're dedicated to. But okay, so that was number 2.
Yeah, but by the way, do you know the story of the Green Prince?
The Greens?
The Green Prince.
The Green Prince? I don't know. I don't think so.
It's a guy who wrote a book, and I'm not completely sure if his story is credible, but it seems to be legit. He was the son of one of the founders.
Oh yeah, the son of the sheikh yes, I know what you're talking about.
And
Yes.
he turned on Hamas, and he became a double agent, and
Yes.
he helped arrest many, let's call them terrorists.
Yes.
Quite
Yes. No, I know what you're talking about. The son of
and then
Sheikh Yassin. Yassin is his name.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And then he describes how he was imprisoned in Israel, and the torturing was being done by his own side. Like Hamas had some kind of civil war in prison, and they tortured each other.
Yes.
So yeah,
No, terrible.
I'm like, I also listened to his interview. I'm not like zooming in on everything that's anti-Israel. I'm willing to listen. No.
Yes, no, 100%. I appreciate your openness and your honesty. Like I said, I wish there were more people like you that would be open to hearing more of this. I don't fault you for having negative opinions, and and we could see things differently. But I obviously you're very open-minded and are interested in hearing.
It's very confusing. It's taking a lot of my energy. It's even affecting my work, actually.
Yes. Okay, so I'm just going back to your questions now. Okay, so now this piece I don't know. I've seen bits and pieces about this. I'm looking at number 3, that the Israeli leadership, supported Hamas or funded Hamas in order to.
This keeps popping up as well.
Yeah, so I don't know more about that. I need to read more about that. That sounds very cynical and bad, and I don't know that it's false though. I just don't know. I don't know enough about it. I've not researched that issue. It sounds like a very foolish political gamble to take. You know what I mean? To try to create a wedge with the people that are even worse to us. I don't know. I don't know more.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time the U.S. sponsored radical Islam.
Yes, of course, the Mujahideen and all.
Yeah,
of course.
It wouldn't be the first time.
No, it would not. Okay, number 4 about the Egypt and Gaza, and why Egypt won't let them in. I hear what she's saying, Kim Iversen, that'll just clear out the Gaza. That's all.
Yeah, it's like letting Israel win.
I understand, but that's based on a very cynical perspective that Israel's real goal is to take back Gaza. I don't think that's Israel's goal. I think Israel's goal is let the Palestinians have it, but not as a terror base. So I think that's, it's coming from a very cynical place to say that that's letting Israel win. And you're willing to sacrifice, Egypt's willing to sacrifice 1 million Palestinian lives because of their cynicism towards Israel. You know what I mean? I do believe Israel wants to control it militarily going forward. Right?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
What do we gain by what do we gain by having it be as far as I can understand it, if Gaza would have actually progressed, it actually would have gone the way that people were hoping, and it actually would have turned into a resort area, beautiful beaches, and a beautiful area, and tourists would come there and everything. What would we lose by that? What did we lose? We already pulled out. We already left there. We already took out all the graves, right? They dug up the graves and took the people out of the cemeteries. We left everything already. What would we have lost if it turned into a beautiful paradise for that? You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense to me. The people who think that this is all like a long-term plan to have it be a terror base so that we could go in and destroy it and then take it back. We would have done it then if we wanted to do that. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. And to me, that's based on a very cynical perspective.
in the perception of people like me, I think we don't separate Gaza and the West Bank, and we see this kind of as the same entity. And
It was supposed to be a
like,
process. It was supposed
yeah,
to
wait,
start in
wait.
Gaza. It was
Yeah.
supposed to start in Gaza, and then that would work, and then we would say, "Great, okay, so let's go to phase 2," and that would be the West Bank. That was the goal. This was supposed to be a process, and that's why I said to you, by the time you came to Israel in 2009, it was done. We were already cynical and hardened, and
Yeah, I saw that.
there's no one to work with over here. You know what I mean? That's the unfortunate thing. What happened? Like I said to you last time, the only way this is going to end is if there's going to be a generation of Palestinians that are actually want peace, actually accept that Israel is not going away, Israel's not disappearing, it's going to be here, and we can live side by side in peace. But until there's that side to work with, I don't see how the situation is going to change.
Yeah, but that's my
5,
question. That's my question. What is the long-term goal then of Israel?
the
The
goal
conditions in the West Bank are horrible. So you will just maintain that then for decades to
I
come?
don't know what to say to that. I honestly don't know. To me, it's not our, nothing's changing in Israel, right? We're not going to say, okay, we're taking down the wall, come and kill us, right? We're not going to say that. Something's only going to change once the leadership in Palestine changes. I don't see how anything can change until that happens. And I don't know that that's going to happen because they crush dissent. And even in the West Bank, they crush dissent. People who speak up against them and want to, take a different approach, they're killed and imprisoned. So I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. It's intractable, as they say. I really don't know. I don't know. Okay, question number 5. You asked, like, why didn't Jordan create an independent state? So I think that, again, this is me being cynical about them, but I think because they wanted to use the Palestinian cause as a wedge against Israel in the world, right? The fact that Palestinians are the only people that are refugees 3-4 generations down, right? There's no logical explanation for that. There's literally no explanation for that. Why didn't they become Jordanian? Why didn't they become Syrian? Why didn't they become Egyptian and Lebanese? To me, it seems, and I think that this has even been said explicitly, they use this Palestine problem as a wedge to force the Arabs to hate Israel and to keep this going. And I think that's one of the reasons that October 7th happened, was because of the Saudi Arabia potential for peace, right? The Palestinians were feeling that, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if Saudi Arabia makes peace with Israel? Then clearly we're not going to be in that powerful position anymore, where this little group of people has the ability to affect the entire Middle East. But people are tired of it. Saudi Arabia is tired of it. People are tired of it. And I think that even with what's going on, I don't think that peace with Saudi Arabia is off the table. I don't think it is.
No, probably not. No, I don't think so. No.
We'll have to see. Okay, number 6. Okay, so this is something that I'm sure it does happen. When you're saying about people having to, be mistreated in the West Bank, and the conditions in the West Bank are terrible, land being taken away, and trees being chopped down, and all of those things. I think it's terrible. I think that what you see as the complicity of the Israeli army and government is not as much as it is. I don't think so. Meaning there are people who are arrested and tried and go to jail for these types of attacks. When you see a video of army people together with people going into a house, I have no idea what the background is of that. I don't know who's who's responsible and who's not responsible. I don't know. I'm not saying it's impossible that there are not injustices. I'm not saying it's impossible at all. However, I do know for a fact that people are prosecuted. Israelis are prosecuted for these types of things, certainly for killing Palestinians, for sure. They're prosecuted. I think that there are many, many times where a Palestinian, just 2 days ago, a 16-year-old boy tried to he killed a police officer. He stabbed her, and she ended up dying a few hours later in the hospital in the old city, just a couple of minutes from where we live over here, by car. A 16-year-old boy. So in the press, that's literally reported as another Palestinian youth murdered in the ongoing struggle following October 7th. He's a terrorist. A 16-year-old boy with a knife who comes over to a police officer and stabs her in the heart, that's a terrorist. That's not a 16-year-old Palestinian boy. And this is all the time presented like this, all the time. I could show you over and over in news articles where it says, 3 youth murdered by Israeli forces. And then you see the Hamas or Islamic Jihad poster of these youth with their AK-47s, and they're not anymore AK-47s. Now they've got M4s, AR-15s, they've got, all the All the time this happens. So I want you to just be aware that many reports of this type of violence and this type of thing are not just innocent Palestinians minding their own business that are being killed. Maybe that does happen. I'm not, I don't know, but there's no question that that's not all of the reports that you hear are not just, people being killed for sport or for fun or for intimidation. There are many, many times that people who are in the middle of committing attacks or involved in, that type of terrorist activity that are killed, and it's reported in the news as, the number of Palestinian killed. That's, I'm saying, like on the AP or Reuters, when it gives the count of, in 2023, there's already been, 175 Palestinian youth that were killed. The vast, vast majority of those 175 were children terrorists, 16, 17-year-olds who, with knives, with guns, were committing acts of terror, children. So again, I'm not saying that there's no injustice. I'm not saying that. However, I'm saying there's no question about it, that there are many things that are presented in a very, very skewed fashion when it comes to this, even in the Western press. I agree with you that the Western press now is more on Israel's side in terms of this current war, but in terms of the ongoing struggle that's happening, when it is absolutely not presented that way. It is presented as violence on the side of Israel without mentioning the people that are being killed. I'll give you an example. I could send you a link to this. There was about 10 years ago, there was an attack in a shul, in a synagogue here in Jerusalem, in a place called Har Nof, where a person came in, and two people came in and they killed 4 people and wounded other people, one with a gun, one with a hatchet. They just went around and they were both killed. And CNN, visited the family who was mourning and did like a whole story about the pain of this family, that their son was killed, and it sort of only mentioned as like an aside that these people were involved in a terrorist act, killing 4 innocent people, no army, nothing. It was religious.
Also terrible.
Like me, I'll send you this link. And I was shocked. I wrote them a letter at the time. I said, the Boston Marathon bombers, right? You know what I'm talking about? Boston Marathon. Can you in a million years imagine a news story going to their parents when they're sitting in mourning and doing a whole story about how painful it is for the family that their kids were murdered after the Boston? It's outrageous, the type of presentation that happens. And I'll send you that link. But there's a lot of misrepresentation of the violence that happens. Again, I'm not saying that it's never unjust, but there's much more of a balance to it than what you are stating over here in this question number 6.
Well, from my side, 2 stories in the West Bank. I spend a lot of time with a dentist and a doctor, very intelligent guys, very, very honest in my opinion, very balanced in their views. And then they describe cases where a Palestinian boy is sitting at his table, doing his homework. Some Israeli soldiers spot him and they kill him. The doctor, he explains that Israeli snipers practice the ephemeral shot or something. They hit you in the groin, and there are only 2 possible outcomes: either you bleed to death, or if they can save you, you're paralyzed. And I have no reason to not believe these stories. Then my host family, the brother of the father of this host family was shot in the back by Israeli soldiers who passed by one day on an armored vehicle, and they just shot him for sport.
I don't believe that. I'm sorry. I just don't.
Sorry, but that was real. That was real.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that they drive around and shoot people in drive-by shootings for sport. That's not what happens over here. That's not what happens. I don't know, but you're definitely not hearing the whole story. There's no question about that. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what was it. Maybe they were trying to get somebody else or something else and all of this, but that just doesn't happen. It just does not happen. The soldiers don't.
I doubt it. I'm not saying that this happens every day or even every 2 days or every week. But
I don't know what to tell you, but that's just not true. That's just not true. That's not true that people are just shot for no reason at all. Peaceful people not doing anything, and people just come over and shoot them. That's just not true. It was a whole thing that happened a couple of years ago, that there was something like this, nothing nearly as bad, but there was a Palestinian that was going through a checkpoint, and then they went and they shot him in the back with a rubber bullet just for fun. That did happen with a rubber bullet. Just
I remember that story.
yeah,
that,
okay, but first of all, it was presented on the news, and the video was shown as if they killed him, which is totally not the case. But
I know the perpetrator was punished.
Punished, sent to jail. Yeah, that. So I don't know. I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
People... And then well, maybe we should get to this March of Return, or
yeah. So that's the next question. So that's also that's outrageous what you're saying. Let me show you something. I was just looking before this at a few different links to try to show you bits and pieces of this, but it's just absolutely not true. Here's one. 1 second. Let me share this with the screen with you here. They were highly violent. They were highly violent attacks that were happening at that time. They were throwing Molotov cocktails. There were people with machine guns that were embedded amongst the civilians. Hamas they don't wear uniforms. I'm saying even now in the videos, there's videos of Hamas firing rockets and all these things. They dress like civilians. They look like civilians. And this is from that time, from the 2018, during that time. And Hamas says most of the protesters killed by Israel in Gaza were members. This is like literally that, Israel says it shows that Hamas is using border protests as a cover for terrorist attacks. So yes, where there may be some innocent people that were caught in the crossfire, of course, I'm sure that happened, but this was absolutely not a case of just peaceful people walking over to the fence and saying, here we are, we want to come in, we want our land back, and Israel mowing them down with guns. That's absolutely not what happened. They were trying to breach the wall. They were trying to cut through. I'll show you another one. 1 second, another quotation from that same time period. And now you probably have heard the names of these places. Hold on 1 second here. Right, this is what Hamas was saying at that time, right? In May 2018, right? Hamas was so confident that they would succeed in breaching the fence. They sent messages via social media informing Palestinians their leaders would be giving victory speeches from Israeli communities. Ismail Haniya from Nachal Oz, right? That was one of the communities that was nearly wiped out, right? Islamic Jihad leader Khalil Achaya from Kfar Aza and Be'eri, right? These are the three towns that were just almost completely wiped out in the past, month by Hamas. And this was during the March of Return, quote unquote, March of Return. This is what they were saying. They were literally storming the wall with explosives, with guns, with Molotov cocktails, with burning tires to obscure with smoke so people wouldn't see what was happening. So now, again, is it possible that there was some overreaction? Is that possible? I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure that there were some people that got caught in the fire, a nurse or what have you. I'm sure that could have happened. But it's absolutely not the narrative that you presented, that it was just peaceful protests and people just coming and saying, we demand our land or whatever it is. And again, just to remind you, the land that they're talking about was never theirs. This is land that since the 1947 partition was meant to be Israel. This is not occupied land. It's only occupied by the people that you say you never heard of, who say that all of Israel is occupied. But that's what they're talking about. Be'eri and Kfar Aza and Nachal Oz, those are all places that were part of the partition, always meant to be for Israel. Not part of Gaza, not part of the West Bank, right? Those are regular Israeli towns in Israel proper by any recognized borders, right? But according to Hamas, it's all occupied. According to Hamas, it's all settlers. And, that's their perspective. So I just, again, the March of Return was not peaceful.
Can you tell me with 100% certainty that the ultimate goal of Hamas is to kill all Jews in Israel? Is that their wet dream?
In their charter. This is what they say. It's in their charter. He just said it again.
I know about the charter, but then I see critics saying, yeah, it's in the charter, but nobody cares.
He just said it in the interview. I'll send you that link for that. It's all over Twitter and the internet where he said October 7th, October 10th, October 1,000,000th.
I saw that.
He said,
he would do it again.
This is what their goal is. Their goal is to, and not only Israel, they're an Islamist regime. They want to take over the world with Sharia law. That's what they want. Israel is the one that they're fighting against right now. But absolutely, they are expressly a genocidal group, and it's nothing new. This is like what I showed you going back to 1948. Many of the Arabs, not all of them, of course, but many of the Arabs that invaded Israel in 1948 explicitly said, yes, we are going to genocide the Jews. It's going to be a glorious massacre. That's what, you know what I mean? This is nothing new. This is an outgrowth of groups that have been doing this for 70 years, 80 years, 100 years almost now. So again, it's so hard for people with the Western mindset to appreciate this and understand that people don't think like we do. They don't.
Yeah, this is very foreign to me. This kind of thinking. Yeah.
Yes, and that's part of why people have a very, very hard time seeing Israel's point of view in all of this, because we assume that people think like us and people, value the same things that we value, but they write all the time about how they want to martyr their children and they're proud of their children martyrs, and that's the difference between the Israelis and us. They cherish life, we cherish death. They literally say these things, literally, with, I can send you all of these links.
I saw some of that, yeah.
This is how they think. And I think people like Kim Iversen and whatever, they just don't want to believe this because it's so foreign to them and it's so hard to believe that there's people that are actually like this, but they are. And that's why people are saying Hamas is ISIS, because I think not that it is ISIS, but it's the same morality, the same moral code that the whole world saw that ISIS is. These are not peaceful people. These are not people that want, goodness and democracy and happiness for everybody. It's a genocidal jihadi approach. That is Hamas. They've never said anything opposite this ever. Arafat, at least he would lie to the Western media. Arafat would always say different things in Arabic and different things in English, right?
I recently saw an old interview with him, and he was smiling all the time, like for 45 minutes. He was always smiling.
He was very, very charismatic, Arafat. As I'm saying, he was very good at playing. Hamas doesn't play games. They're very, very open about.
Yeah, they seem very simple.
But again, the world doesn't want to see it this way. They just don't. So they ignore it. They ignore it, and they make it sound like there's two sides that are similar, or that we're the bad guys. We're the Nazis. We're the ones that are, barbaric Nazis. Okay.
Can we talk a little bit then about how Israel is now reacting? Like in your opinion, is this the correct reaction? Bombing a refugee camp, cutting off water, not letting in trucks with aid and supply and.
So you're making it sound like if we would let these people in and let the aid in and let the trucks in, so the Gazan civilians, right, would benefit from it and they would get aid and they would get medicine and they would get materials. But that's not what happens. Anything that comes into Gaza goes to Hamas. That's it. That's the sad reality. Anything that enters Gaza, fuel. I'm saying you saw this. I'm sure there was a fuel shipment that came in, and Gaza came with guns to the UN and stole it. They took it. They took the fuel that was meant for the people. So what are we supposed to do? I hear it's an awful, terrible situation. It's an awful, awful situation. And I also don't want that the regular Palestinian civilians can't have running water and can't have what they need, but they're not going to get it anyway. If it gets into that area, it's just going to go straight to Hamas. If there's a pause in fighting, Hamas is just going to rearm and rebuild and re-entrench themselves. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy. It is, but there's none of these things are actually going to help the Palestinians. That's the terrible, terrible piece of this, is that we're fighting against a mentality and a situation that is just not, it's so foreign to us. It's so foreign. It's usually obvious that a government and the army are there to serve and protect the people that they are serving. And of course, they want the medical supplies to get to their people. And of course, they want their people to get to safety. And of course, they want their people to have, but that's just not the case over here. It's just not. And that's not our fault. And so I don't know. And yes, I agree with you. It looks awful. It looks terrible. It looks horrible. And it's so easy to point the finger at Israel. It's so easy to say, look at these animals, not even letting them have this. Even the Nazis gave them water. Who knows what they would say? You know what I mean? But the sad, tragic, awful fact of the matter is that they're not going to be helped either way. The only way to help them is to get rid of Hamas. That's it. That's the only way to help the actual Palestinian people. And I get it. I get it that it's very hard for the world to accept this and to understand it and to see it this way and to appreciate. I understand that. However, Israel has been dealing with these people for decades, and they do get it. They do understand that when you talk peace with them, they see that as weakness, and the only language they understand is strength. And that's, you know what I mean? That's the reason that I think the only reason that Hezbollah has not gotten more into the war is because of how strongly Israel was responding. If Israel would have responded in a more weak, toned down way, as Hezbollah immediately would see that as weakness, and I think they would have been much more involved in this war. But Israel,
there, I think that Iran, for some reason, is holding them back. I think Iran controls Hezbollah in many ways, and I think Iran doesn't want to get involved and tells Hezbollah, "Whoa, whoa, stand down."
okay, but
I
think that's because they're not sensing the weakness in Israel that they were hoping for. I think
probably this flotilla of 70 ships ready to bomb southern Lebanon, I suppose, if it escalates, is also helping as a deterrent.
Yeah, probably. But it's so I you know what I mean? I completely understand what you're saying and the way that it looks, and the people who don't understand the situation, it looks to them as, you know, completely evil and brutal and inhumane and all of these things. And my response is only yes. All of that stuff, that's Hamas. That's exactly what they are, and that's exactly what they're doing, and that's exactly the scenario that they are forcing onto their people. And Israel is stuck. Israel, just like the Gazan civilians are stuck, like you said, between Iraq and a hard place, and I feel for them. Israel is also very stuck over here, but they're not gonna err on the side of more dead Israelis. That they're not gonna do. You know what I mean?
And are you then hopeful that Hamas will be defeated?
I am. I actually am. I do think that, first of all, I think that Qatar, something's going to happen in Qatar, whether it's going to be assassinations of some of the higher ups over there, or Qatar will be pressured into you know, kicking them out or something. I do think something's going to shift in Qatar, and I do think so. I really do. I hope I'm not dreaming. I know many people that are fighting. I know people who are literally on the ground there fighting. I'm praying for them every day, and I'm you know, hoping that they'll be safe. But I think Israel's not going to stop this time. I don't think they're going to.
I also don't think so.
I think they've learned their lesson, and it's, you know, they're not going to bow to international pressure. They just won't, because they see what's on the line right now. It terrifies me. It terrifies me that, you know, the thought that it could be that the government somehow let this happen, you know, like 9/11 or something, in order to do this. I really pray that that's not the case. I wish I could say with confidence that I knew 100% it was not the case. I don't know.
Well, I'm just like you there. It's an option. I can't
say
no
sense. The whole thing just makes no sense to me that it happened this way. I hope we're going to get clarity at some point. I hope we'll get it clear and understand it at some point. But
it would be extremely cynical.
Yes, that's like the worst case.
But then the alternative is that Israel at that point was completely incompetent. Like, it's either it's complicit or let it happen, or it's completely incompetent.
Yes, very, very difficult choices. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very, very difficult. I agree. I agree with that. Absolutely. Okay, I wanted to just one other piece I wanted to get to one of your questions.
Okay.
I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit. So just as this is not what I wanted to say, but you were asking in terms of like where's the line between anti-Israel and anti-Semitism and all of that. So to me, there's like that meme that I sent you about when people are only speaking up when it's Israel, right? So that to me smells of anti-Semitism. You know what I mean? When people don't speak up about Assad, and they don't speak up about Myanmar, and they don't speak up about Mali, and they don't speak up about Yemen, and they don't speak up about anything else, but all of a sudden when it's Israel, then it's, you know, all hell breaks loose. I don't know exactly what do you make of that? I don't know. You know what I mean? That's one of the definitions of anti-Semitism in the whatever the UN definition is. You know, when Israel is singled out for criticism, when it, you know, many other countries are in the exact same position or the same situation. So I don't know. So I'll tell you what Kim Iversen said to me, which I think is total baloney. But in my texting with her, she said, well, no, it's because she said, well, we don't give money to Yemen, and we don't give money to Mali, and we don't give money to Myanmar, and we don't give money to Syria, but we're funding this against the Arabs. We're funding against Gaza. I don't believe that's the reason.
Could be part of it, yeah.
I don't know. Ireland is not funding Israel, right? Ireland is not funding Israel, and they're very anti-Israel, and I don't see them ever speaking up about these other atrocities. So I don't know. I really just don't know. I just, as a person, I try very much not to take the ADL approach of like everything's anti-Semitism and this is anti-Semitism and that. I don't agree with that. I do agree that criticizing Israel when it's legitimate is legitimate, absolutely. However, when it's very, very, very one-sided and it's very clear that Israel is the only one that's being singled out for it, that I don't know.
It's also only singled out in a positive way. Like this morning, I watched this third Republican debate. There are many conflicts in the world. Only two were mentioned:
Yes.
Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, and of course Hamas.
Yeah.
And then all these politicians are in competition to see who supports Israel the most. And maybe that angers people. Like, why are these politicians only expressing their massive support for Israel? Maybe that bothers people, and that's why they zoom in on Israel.
It could be part of it.
They didn't mention Syria. They didn't mention Myanmar, where things are blowing up. They don't mention Congo. It's
Afghanistan, Pakistan sending out 1.7 million.
Yeah, they don't mention
Afghans. Right. I definitely hear that.
There are tensions in Kosovo. They don't mention that.
Yes. I don't know.
Then it's also the politicians' fault for always focusing on Israel, and then people follow this more and get emotional. I think it's logical.
It could be. I really don't know. I think that the Palestinians have a very, very good PR structure. I think they have a very, very good with social media and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and all of this. I think they have a very, very good
TikTok, Instagram. Their celebrities are doing really well.
Yeah. They have a very, very strong PR. I mean, what I saw on TikTok, the amount of pro-Palestine versus pro-Israel that it changed after October 7th. Did you see that chart? Like in the beginning, they were basically the same, and then boom, like pro-Palestine. So
that's with every dead child in Gaza. I think it goes.
I think so, but it also wouldn't surprise me if China is playing with the algorithm in order to sow more unrest. I don't know.
I admit I know very little about China. Could be.
I don't know.
And by the way, in that third Republican debate, there was a whole bit about TikTok and how they want to ban it. I thought that was very unusual that a country wants to ban an app.
Okay, I don't have a strong opinion about it. I think it's very unusual that we have what's essentially an enemy of America, China, that they have an incredible intravenous drip into the minds of American children like never before.
I've also heard that TikTok is completely different in China, that it's very educational.
Exactly.
And China, it's complete bullshit.
Exactly, right.
I teach teenagers. I see what it does to some, like concentration span obliterated.
Yes.
And I asked them, what did you do yesterday? I watched TikTok for 2 hours. Okay, tell me, what did you see? I don't remember.
Right.
But you watched it for 2 hours. Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But the question is if this is deliberate. I don't know if this is deliberate, if this is the goal.
It looks deliberate to me. Like the fact that in China it's all educational and it's elevating and it's it's good for them, and that in America it's like the worst of the worst content and getting people into all these other crazy issues and psychological issues that spread on TikTok. It's really crazy. It's a crazy world. It's like
I don't have TikTok, but
me neither. Yeah.
And another question, I saw this question pop up on Twitter a lot. Like, why does the IDF play with these sexualized images? It seems to be a trend. Like
That's weird. So what you sent to me, I never saw that before.
But this was just one example. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. Many times I don't send you something because I think, okay, this must make him uncomfortable. I'm not going to send it.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I don't know what's behind
that's just one example, but it's almost everywhere.
And it's from the official Israeli
TikTok
account.
TikTok dances. The IDF account has all these very sexual dancers, men and women. Then the male soldiers always seem to be kind of like almost like transvestites. Also strange. Okay, already strange that they are dancing, but why do they need to dance in a feminine way? I don't have
That's
anything
weird.
against gays, but it's weird. It's like I don't get
Yeah,
it.
I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
I
And
don't
then
know.
you have these
Don't know.
incredibly attractive women. I really, they're really beautiful. And then they're dancing in uniform, and I see people ask, why? Do all armies do this? I don't know. Maybe it's a trend all over the world. I don't know.
I don't know. That's weird. I don't know.
What is the point of that?
I don't know.
It's like, so then my impression then is when I'm alone and I'm getting angry, I think, look, she's sexy, she can kill babies. That seems to be the message. Like, I'm sexy, right? Let me kill somebody.
That's weird. Yes, I don't know. I don't know. I only heard this from you. I believe you. If I'm saying I don't know anything.
It's easy to find. It's
Yeah,
easy to
I
find.
don't. That's not the. I don't know. I don't know. I have to go in a minute, but I wanted to just one more question that you raised that I wanted to talk about just for a minute. You spoke about Hebron also, and like why it's such an absurd situation over there.
Yeah, that was the creepiest place I've ever been to in my life. That was the only time in Palestine that I got a little bit scared. Like, well, I was like, "Whoa, this looks dodgy."
Right. Oh, well, I two things. There's another thing also I wanted to you asked. This is a very important one, but you asked about an Arabs holding high positions in Israel. So
Yeah.
so the answer is absolutely yes. On the Supreme Court, there is a Muslim Arab justice on the Supreme Court, the Israeli Supreme Court, 100%, just like everybody else that's up there. A Muslim Arab is there. They have members of the Knesset. The Knesset has 120 members. It fluctuates depending on elections, but right now there are 10 members of the 10 members of the Knesset that are Arab Muslims and Christians. And in the way it works over here, out of the 120, they need to come up with a coalition of 61. Right, you need 61 members in order to have a coalition. So in the previous government, not the current Netanyahu government, but in the previous government, the Arab group was part of that coalition, meaning they were in the seat of power. They controlled the government coalition more than Bibi did. You know what I mean? So that's for sure the case. There's never been an Arab prime minister. I don't think there ever will be, just because of the numbers, right? Mm-hmm. But as far as like representation in the country, it's again, apartheid is the most ridiculous thing. It's like, you know what I mean? They literally are. There are judges, lawyers on the Supreme Court, in the government. There, absolutely. Okay, but finally, just Hebron. We'll just talk for a minute. For us, for Jewish people, I'm saying, I don't know. Are you familiar with the Bible? I don't know if you're Christian or you're.
I went to a Catholic school. We read the Bible. So.
Right. Okay. So Hebron, even before Jerusalem, right? Hebron was in the Bible as the place where Abraham purchased that land, and he's buried over there, and Sarah is buried there, and Jacob, and so Hebron has been always a very, very, very central, holy Jewish city. You know what I mean? It's been something, even when it was not majority Jewish. It's been for thousands of years not majority Jewish, but there's always been a Jewish presence over there until 1929. In 1929, there was a massacre over there, the Hebron massacre, it was called, which was a riot that erupted from the Arabs, and they killed 100 people and more than 100 people. And at that point, all the Jews left. Then they came back in 1961 to establish a Jewish presence over there. But I think it's a very, again, I don't know if this is moral, or I don't know. I know the situation. There's very few people that live there full time. There are people that live there full time. There are hundreds of people that are not just coming and going. There's hundreds of people that live there full time. But it's very, very symbolic. You know what I mean? It's a very, very powerful symbolic place. And the place that we pray over there, I forgot what it's called, something of the patriarchs, the cave, maybe the cave of the patriarchs or something like that. But that's like one of the holiest places on the planet for us. We have Jerusalem, the place of the temple. We have Rachel's tomb, which is just outside of Jerusalem, and then the cave of the patriarchs is like one of the holiest places for Jews. People go there to pray every day. I think it's I think there's something very important symbolically that Jews are not going to leave and just give it up. It doesn't make so much sense, right? Like practically, that there's thousands of soldiers there to protect a few hundred people. But it's a very, very powerful symbol of the Jewish connection to the land.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That this was a place
Mhm.
that Abraham, in the Bible, Abraham paid money and he bought it for us. You know what I mean? He bought it in order to have it, to have, you know, to be a place for Jews to come and pay pilgrimage and pray at his grave and at the grave of his son and grandson.
Mhm.
So I understand that it looks crazy from the outside, and maybe it is a little bit crazy, you know what I mean, pragmatically. At the same time, it's a very, very important spiritual center for
Mhm.
Jewish people. Or again, going back thousands of years, saying people
Mhm.
all around the world, you know, recognized Hebron as like, you know, one of the
Mhm.
Jewish centers in Israel. So I don't think they're ever going to
Mhm.
give it up. You know what I mean? I don't think
But do you need a permanent presence there? Like Belgian Catholics don't want a permanent presence in Rome when they want to visit holy places.
I
They
hear.
go and visit holy places, but they don't. We need to
I hear, like I
maintain
said, I
three
think
other
it's
Belgians
there's
here.
something very powerfully symbolic about it, that
Mhm.
that this is, you know, I mean, this is like the very, very first place in this entire land that was owned by Jews and settled by Jews, and so I think it's a very, very, you know, maybe this is the place where there's some irrational,
Mhm.
you know, some irrationality behind the hanging on
Mhm.
to it like this. I understand that. And I certainly don't condone any of the violence or any of the thing, people throwing garbage at them and whatever. That's awful.
Yeah, that I
Yes,
saw that.
yes, I don't know what, you know, but there have been a number of massacres there over the centuries that happened, and you know, there's a
Mhm.
lot of tension there. But it's a very, very important. It's actually, you know, in Judaism, every Sabbath, every week, we read a portion of the Old Testament, of the Torah. So it
Yeah.
happens to be that this coming week, is the section where we read about, once a year we go through the whole
Mhm.
you know, the whole Bible, and
Mhm.
this week is the week where we read about Abraham purchasing that piece of land and
Mhm.
you know, settling it. But okay, I got to run.
I think it's called the Pentateuch. These five.
Pentateuch, exactly right. The 5 books, Penta from
Yeah,
5, the 5 books.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we studied Jewish culture a little bit in school, like a little bit. Yeah.
Right. Okay,
Okay.
we'll continue. I want to continue, William. I really am.
Yeah,
I'm
me
enjoying this
too.
very
Me
much.
too. I really appreciate this. You don't know how much actually. I really appreciate it. Really,
Yeah,
thank you.
likewise. I like your perspective, and you're raising important questions for me to think about and look into, and
Same
I
here.
appreciate it.
Same here. Same here.
All right, take care, man. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.